Welcome to Ready to Exhale, where we center Black women, their lived experiences, expertise, and rich stories. In each episode, we will gain a deeper understanding of what it takes to hold space for our own well-being. This is a brave space where you will be inspired to express your joy and live in the fullness of who you are. It's also a place where we are no longer waiting to exhale. So now, get ready to exhale and enjoy the show. All right. Oh, it's so good to have Topeka with us today on Ready to Exhale, the podcast. You're going to just get so much out of this conversation. Anytime I talk to Topeka, it's always good conversation, nuggets of wisdom. She's got so much going on, doing really good work. So we're going to just dive right in. Topeka, welcome to Ready to Exhale. We're exhaling today.
Thank you, Qatar. You don't know how bad I need to exhale today. So I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on. I just want to take just kind of the top of this this interview and this conversation and just have you talk a little bit about the work that you do, introduce yourself, let our listeners know just about Topeka.
Sure. So I say that my life's vision is EPIC. And EPIC is an acronym standing for Ending Poverty and Incarceration of Women and Girls Globally. Mm-hmm. And that has really just been the catalyst of every single thing that I do each and every day since I actually found myself in federal prison now 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. Leaving 8 years ago. So 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. Wow. The time just goes fly. Mm-hmm. And from everything that I saw, the disparities that were happening specifically around women and women of color, God spoke to me while I was there and in my stillness, and told me what I needed to do. And while I did not know what I was going to do or how I was going to do it, considering I was facing at the time when God spoke to me 130 months, just 10 years and 10 months, also knew that if God imparted this vision in me and I was obedient, that God would clear the path. And God did. Wow. And so I said, it is so, important, even in the exhale today, thinking about, all the work that I do going, into prisons each day, not only during the week when I'm going into different prisons all over the world, but also, speaking to women who have transitioned out of systems of violence, incarceration, domestic intimate partner violence, sexual trauma and violence, early childhood trauma, mental health issues, all of these things. Mm-hmm. And then visit my loved ones who are incarcerated. It's a lot, Mm-hmm. And so, but I know God had to keep me wrapped up in all of this in order for me to just stay clear and focused and purposeful.
Love that. I mean, as you're sharing that, and I've said this before, as I'm sharing my story, we say it in like a 2-minute or a minute soundbite, but that there's so much that happened, right? Mm-hmm. So much grit and so much courage and so much determination and so many tears and so just there's so much in that soundbite that you didn't say, right? Right. That there's so much that went into your journeys. I'd like to dive in a little bit more to your journey to becoming the founder of Ladies of Hope Ministries. And, you talked about being incarcerated and getting the vision there.
what happened once that vision dropped into your soul, dropped into your spirit? You're like, okay, clear a path. There was a path that cleared because Ladies of Hope exists today. So tell us a little bit more about that journey and the path to getting the organization propped up and doing what it's doing today.
Yeah. So while I was incarcerated, I went through the spiritual journey. I was raised in the church. I always knew who God was. But, as many of us do, sometimes we lose our way. And in my own, I guess, journey of finding myself, of understanding who I was, or as my mother says, whose I was and belonged to, God, I struggled with my sense of connectedness of belonging. And so, I found myself from growing up in the all-white neighborhood, being the only Black person there, which was cool because these were my friends, to now going into college to an HBCU and being one of many. And while, things were different, I talked different and I moved different and I didn't feel accepted. I started to do things and be around people that I thought would make me feel connected, and that I thought then would be a way for me to be considered accepted. And this journey went on, for many years. And eventually I found myself, incarcerated in a federal prison for a drug conspiracy charge with no drugs. Through that journey, you lose your sense of values sometimes. And while, I had an idea that people, use drugs because they wanted to use drugs, I didn't know the things that I learned. I thought that because I wasn't actually giving people drugs directly, and that people actually would choose to take them and purchase drugs, that it was their choice. And while I sold drugs, I didn't use them. And so I knew better, so why didn't they? Right? I remember sitting in an NA class, Narcotics Anonymous class, and I just went and just to be selfish because I was trying to get out of my cell. I was locked in a cell for 21 to 23 hours a day by myself. And I went to this class, and one day I just asked the sister, like, why did you use drugs? Everyone says, just say no, don't do drugs. And she said, well, my father had been raping me, and he gave me heroin for the very first time. He told me to take the heroin so the pain would go away. And then another sister said, well, the only time I'm able to spend time with my mother is when we smoke crack together. And I completely lost it. And, I cried and I begged for forgiveness. And I couldn't understand how I could contribute to the harm of someone else. And I realized that everyone didn't actually have a choice. That people who seemingly we think, my parents were married 58 years until my father passed away a few years ago. And they were protectors and nurturers and givers and, providers and all of the things. And I could never understand how your dad would want to take advantage and harm you in that way. Right. And so I pled guilty because I was. And, I went on to my journey. And while during that journey, and God placed, the Ladies of Hope Ministries on my heart one night, woke me up. And I was like, okay, this is dope, but I got 10 years. Like, God, how am I going to do this? And so I meditated and I fasted, prayed, and, I had others pray with me. And I'm like, I'm not going to be here. God said. And so I talked to the lawyer, and my lawyer was like, you're going to do this time. You're not above the law. And I was like, well, God said for me to write a letter to the judge. And he was like, well, you go ahead and write your letter. I don't know what kind of God you serve, but you go right ahead. And so that was 2013 going into 2014. I prayed over it with my prayer sisters and put it in the mail after New Year. And the day before my birthday, March 5th, 2014, my birthday's March 6th, I got a call into the office, and I was told that my sentence was cut from 130 months to 65 months, and that I had qualified for a drug program. And I was like, why? I don't use drugs. And they're like, well, it's the only program in the federal system that allow you to get a year off your sentence. And I was like, well, sign me up and send wherever I have to go. And I went through that program, received 12 months off my sentence. A law passed. I received another 15 months off my sentence. And I was told I was going home in 2 weeks. And so I came home May 5th, 2015, opposed to September 30th, 2021. And I knew that God expedited the calling on my life so that I could come out and do God's will. And I did. And I came out and I hit the ground running. And I started learning about the impact that incarceration had on women. I went back to school. I went to Columbia University, New York Theological Seminary, did a host of fellowships and things, created a panel series called Real Women, Real Voices, to share the experience of children who were incarcerated, women who were inside of prison, and women in reentry. And then I started my organization in 2017, Ladies of Hope Ministries, with our first house that we had in the Bronx. Since then, houses in New Orleans, Maryland, and Trinidad. And then just began to build programs based on the needs that sisters stated that they that were not getting given, and then things that I went through. And so there's 6 programs. We impact over 5,000 women since 2017 in 34 states in the Caribbean, and still going. And so that's how, it was birthed, often in our most traumatic experiences. If we do have a moment of stillness and we're able to go through that journey and allow God to use us, then, I think everyone will find what their purpose and path is in their life.
Yeah, I love that mission, that vision, that calling, as you refer to it, came when you got still, right? And you mentioned, first of all, it's fucking amazing. Like, what? Like,
right.
Phenomenal story, and mission and vision, and what you are doing, and how that all unfolded. But something that you said was that you would spend a lot of time, like hours a day, in your cell. Like, how did that impact your mental health? Like, what? Like, I mean, you said it, and then, you breezed past it, and I'm like, wait a minute, like that, like if you're kind of stuck in a tiny little space, you can only get out at certain times of the day. How did you manage that? How did that impact your mental and emotional health?
It was really hard because I was going through fear and harm, and I've never been alone for that period of time by myself, and I would hear things, and then as I started realizing that, wait, maybe I'm losing my mind, that I began to breathe and read the Bible and read any book that I could get my hands on. I just started reading. I read hundreds of books and I would go through books in a day, like 500-page books. I would just read. Write. I wrote a lot. Thank God I had family that I could call when I was out that hour, whether it was my mom or my best friends. I got visits regularly. People came to see me. And I prayed a lot. I meditated a lot. And once I realized that this was the time that I needed to work on myself, because I had been running so much, I was doing the things that I was doing, in the street, selling drugs and those type of things. But I also was working, and I also was, being everything for everyone but myself. And so I didn't realize how much I had been moving until I had got that still. And so it was going through, the healing journey of forgiveness, forgiving myself for the harms that I've caused others, but then also forgiving others for the harm they caused me. And didn't mean picking up the phone and talking to someone, and meaning talking to God, right? And then it was getting to the grips of understanding this is where I am in this moment, and it was for a greater purpose. And I remember the first time I had opened the Bible after many years, when I was in that cell, and I opened it to Romans 8:28. And it says, in all things, God does good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. And I was like, okay, God, like, I don't know what good is going to come out of this, but I know that something good per your word says that this is all going to work together for my good. And so what gratitude can I find in this when I was going through so much hardship and so much, internal trauma and, imprisoned in my mind and, trying to relearn things, going back to the core of visions and teachings, that my parents gave me. They invested in me. I mean, I was classically trained in piano and flute, dance. I did all the things. I had all of the opportunities. And so to get back to that little girl, right, before she was harmed, and to say that it is okay to heal and that, you're great for who you are. And, whatever journey you went through, those that you could have prevented, yet those you couldn't have, because when you're young and you experience things, you don't have the ability to prevent someone from harming you because you're little, and often we blame ourselves, maybe I shouldn't have done this, or maybe I should have, and you don't, you're a child, And so when I was able to just come to grips and understanding about those things, and all of this happened in that 11-month period. So when it was time for my sentencing, and I was like, okay, like, I know I'm going to come home. So I thought, I've done this journey, God, and then God was like, I got a little more for you,
Right,
and
right.
So I was then sentenced at that time to 130 months. And I was like, all right, God, well, you said all things will work together for my good. So, and I also know and realize now that each step that I went through, it was for this purpose. Like, it was all preparation for not only the work that I've been able to do and accomplish, but for what I am going to do and accomplish. I have loved ones that are incarcerated, and, my youngest brother, and my fiance, both, who are actually in solitary right now. And understanding the things that they're going through, going to visit them, regularly, because I understand that they're in their cell 23 and 1. So understanding what that looks like. And then, one of my friends sent me something yesterday about how Congress, something just passed, I think, in the House, that, solitary confinement is torturous and inhumane, and to remember being in that state, to know what they're going through, and all the other men and women around the country, the world, that are living in these confined places and not having an understanding, but the resilience that can come out of it, the learning to exhale that comes from it, the pause and the reset when you're there, even within darkness, can be so much light, and while mine was 11 months, like, I have friends who have been in solitary a year, 18 months, day for day, no visits, no phone, no, and to think and see what they have been able to do and accomplish through those extreme torturous adversities. The mind is powerful. And, it can we can build ourselves into the things that we want, or we can also destroy ourselves into the things that we want, right? And so I think it is so critical for us to understand just how powerful, we are, and what we can do and accomplish in our stillness.
Yeah, that's powerful. While incarcerated, you've talked about this, how you realize that jail and, being incarcerated, they're not conducive really to healing and rehabilitation, right? Can you tell us more about why healing and rehabilitation is imperative for those that are incarcerated, right? Those that are there, the people that you talked about that you are in a relationship with, right? The women that you work with. Why is healing and rehabilitation imperative for folks that are incarcerated?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'll even speak more broadly. Like healing and rehabilitation is important for every human being, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not one person who can honestly sit and say that they have not been through some type of adverse experience that they wish they didn't go through, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you are incarcerated, you know, there are drivers of trauma and pain that lead you to incarceration. Then when you're incarcerated, these are compounded by more trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once you leave incarceration, there is more trauma, you know, in the reentry experience, because now you have 44,000 barriers to trying to get your life back in order. And when you cannot get a job, you can't get housing, you can't open a bank account, you can't get health care, when your basic human rights are not and cannot be met, then you're subjected to doing crimes of survival in most cases in order just to eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the system does not create a healthy environment. First of all, healthy environments are light, they are bright, they are clean, fresh air, clean water, good conditions, and prisons are not that. You know, they're not only in the trauma again that you're experiencing day for day in there, there's the trauma of other people surrounding you that you have to navigate. There's the trauma of the staff that they experience working in those conditions that now are being taken out on you. And then you're expected to come out into society, because 95% of all people who are incarcerated do come home one day. You're expected to come back heal and whole, when now you're trying to reintegrate with a whole nother system of oppression, right? And so the healing, you know, is internal work. It is work that they don't teach you. You know, you can go to the psychologist who often or psychiatrist who often is just going to put you on medication. You'll be medicated, you come out, and then you'll be looking for more medication. And when you don't have health insurance, you'll end up self-medicating, right? And there's another. There's no tools typically that you learn. You know, there's a few programs here and there that you can go through that will focus on cognitive behavioral therapy and other things, but even in that, it is only offered to a small demographic of the prison population. You have to be within a certain amount of time to the door, and that is not helpful. If I've been incarcerated 20 years and I still have 20 years to go, I still need some type of cognitive behavioral therapy while in that, and not prepare me while I go home, because I need to be prepared as I'm living through this environment, right? You know, being able to hear positive words of affirmation, understanding what they are. When you've been told that you're worthless, you won't be anything your entire life, then you get into incarceration and you lose your identity. You don't have a name. You're inmate 429999037. That was my number. I know it like my social, right? And no matter what I've gone through, no matter what I've overcome, that is a number that I will never forget, right? And so it's these things that we don't truly understand. And when you have 2.2 million people who are presently inside, you have 4.6 million people that are presently under surveillance in probation and parole. You have 70 million people with criminal convictions in this country. Our neighbor, 1 in 3 people have an impacted loved one. That means that everyone is impacted by the system. And if we are opening up opportunities for people to truly have a real shot, because some people don't even have a first, right? We are going to continue to see these cycles of abuse. We are consciously and unconsciously perpetuating these cycles of abuse, and we're not giving people grace or even space to try to heal, even in their journey home.
As Black women, we have everyday stressors, and those stressors are compounded by systemic racism. This stress weathers our mental and emotional health. It's imperative to move this stress out of our bodies so we can live healthier and happier lives. Exhale app is a resource to partner with you in your well-being journey. To download, go to the App Store and Google Play. Now, let's get back to our episode.
It's that support, right? You got it. It is wraparound support if we really are about rehabilitation, which is the prison system really about that? It doesn't sound like it at all. And it reminds me of, we did a survey. Exhale surveyed over 1,000 Black women around their mental, emotional, physical health. And those that were surveyed, the respondents said that they want and desire specific tools that are catered to them and their specific needs to support them in their mental, emotional well-being journey. Resources like Exhale and other resources that are out there. How would that have impacted you? Had you had something to help kind of guide you when you were incarcerated? How could that have impacted you? How can that impact other women to have a space and a place that really speaks specifically to the way in which, you're weaving through life, right? I'm just curious around that.
Yeah, I think, even for me, the person who had all the support in the world, I was very privileged even while incarcerated, visits every week, family and friend support. If I wanted books, they sent them in. If I needed information, it was emailed to me. And I do not take that lightly because the majority of people who are inside did not. If I had a tool that would, allow me to begun even deeper work while I was inside, I believe that when I came home, even some of the things that I've experienced, even in my reentry journey, I wouldn't have had to experience, and in full transparency, I realized when I had first come home and I began to build my organization, and I was getting a lot of pushback from people, even in the community that I serve and from the community I serve. And I found myself trying to fit in again, trying to blend, wanting to be accepted. And when it wasn't feeling good, I wasn't looking good, I was gaining all this weight, I wasn't looking myself, I wasn't bringing my full self because I was trying not to overshadow or overshine people because I wanted people to and again, my people to accept me. When I realized it was the same behavior that I was perpetuating that actually landed me through this journey that ended up incarcerated, I had to stop, right? And I had to say, okay, I had to recognize and acknowledge that, but I knew that because of the self-work that I'd done. If I had those tools prior to coming out, I wouldn't have had to go through that because I would have been built up. And while I knew, my Bible back and forth, and, I had a community that surrounded me of people that loved me. When I went out into the world, outside of the community of people that I knew that loved me and cared, I was being, I guess it was like preyed on, right? I was like new blood, new fish. And, it's the same thing. And I was actually talking to my fiance over the weekend about that. Like, being in the street and selling drugs, I felt safer than I have at times working in nonprofit, right? It's fascinating. The people that I dealt with in that life, I knew what I was dealing with, right? I knew exactly that they didn't, it wasn't any loyalty. It wasn't any friendship. It wasn't, and this was business. And if I wasn't careful, that someone would try to take me out of my business, right? Because they wanted that position. They wanted that. Now I thought working in nonprofit because I'm giving of service and I'm serving my community and I'm doing it in a big way that's opening doors and helping other people, that I would be celebrated and I would be wrapped in close, embraced with love. But yet it was backstabbing. It was, trying to, just truly break me. And when I was like, it was fascinating because, demons are demons. And, they show up. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are leading in their trauma and they haven't gone through the healing work.
Right.
And so when you're going and you're living and you're working in a space that is high trauma, you have to realize that you are working and navigating through the demons. And I didn't realize that. I thought everybody wanted what I wanted, which was freedom, right? Liberation, for my sisters. This is what I thought. And I didn't realize that the same people that rejected the beauty of who I was is the same people who do that now. And so, I need to learn that, and I have, through these last few iterations of experiences I've been through, that, I have my tribe. I have my people who are close to me, who do embrace me, who do love me, who want to see me win. And I surround myself in that. When I'm doing my work and I'm pouring into others, I'm pouring in and then I leave the cup. I don't try to fill the cup from there because that water is contaminated and you can't bring contaminated water back, right? Because what that does is then contaminate you. We'll start preaching, but
honey, a whole word.
Yeah,
it's so important to really what I'm hearing is this prioritization of you and your wellness and your well-being, knowing who your people are, knowing where to get your cup filled, right? That's what I was hearing too, is sometimes we have our cup and we just go dipping it here, dipping it there, dipping it there. And that's not your well. That's not where you're going to get your nourishment. That's not the folks that are going to nurture you. That's not the people that have your best interest at heart. That's not the people that, or the things that fill you. And how we have to kind of, even in our work, even if it's good work, you're giving back, you're doing amazing things. That doesn't mean that that's where you're going to get everything that you need, right? And how we have to create our own self-care practices, and that includes the people in our lives, to be able to say, this is where this is my well, right? And this is where I find fulfillment, and this is where I get support, and these are the people that have my back. So I'm curious around yes, you could have preached. Preach. What are those self-care practices for you? You talked about your people, your support system. What are some other self-care practices that you have in your life where, you're like, I got to do this so that I can make sure that I am well. You touched on it a little bit, but I want to hear a little bit more about how you take care of yourself, or if you. Sometimes I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. So when somebody asks me that, I'm like, well, I could do better. Do better. Yeah.
No, for sure. I think we all could do better, right?
Yeah.
I often envy even sometimes people who work for me who would taking advantage of their vacation time. I'm like, well, and I'm like, I can't be mad at that because I created it for myself too. It's
right.
responsibility to take pause. But what brings me joy and self-care is, one, seeing my family. They mean so much to me. My nieces and nephews, my godchildren, they range from ages 2 all the way to 21, and I don't get to see them as much as I'd like because, we're out here trying to save the world. But most recently, in experiencing a very traumatic experience, even within my own organization, I realized that I had to take time for me and for my family. Because in the end, that's what's most important. That's what I do this for too. And while I was thinking about, what else do I do for self-care? It's, praying, meditating. And when I'm not doing that, regularly, I'm off, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, visiting my friends, my fiance, even being able to have an opportunity to sit and talk, to someone for hours where it's just, they're focusing on you, how are you feeling? How is your day? That's self-care for me too.
Mm-hmm.
To know that someone's thinking of you in that way is important, because so much is going on. I love water. I'm a Pisces. So, going to the beach, even if it is just walking and putting my feet in the water, which I'm hoping I have an opportunity to do today.
Yes, because you're on the beach
Yes,
today.
I am. So I would love to do that today.
Mm.
And then, I've gotten, I think in my adult life, as I've gotten older, like I enjoy being by myself. Like I enjoy going out to dinner by myself. I enjoy doing activities alone. And I think part of that is, I think I'm the most extroverted introvert. Like I'm always out. I'm always around people. I'm always public speaking. I'm always doing something. And yet I realized a few years ago that while I was around so many people, I felt alone. Right. It was like so many people around me, so many people, but I just felt like I was operating by myself. I didn't feel supported. And so I said, well, what do I need to do in order to gain that support? And that was support into me, take care of me. You look at yourself and, you don't even recognize yourself. I realized I was like, oh my God, I gained all this weight. Where did that come from? I look at pictures of myself. I'm like, who is that girl? Like, who was that girl, I should say, and that also, when you're focusing and doing all this work, you do not take care of yourself. And that is something that, we have to do. So I feel like breathing, like I love music, listening to music, praying, meditating, being loved on and saying, I love you to people, and being around my family because they don't want anything from me. They just want to love me. They know I love them. And so sitting and spending time with them is what's, most valuable to me, in these moments right now.
That's so good. It's just really about prioritizing ourselves. And sometimes work and life be getting in the way. It be getting in the way.
It is in the way.
It is. And and we have to push. It's almost like kind of moving ourselves constantly to the center, right? And it's so hard to do. And society doesn't encourage that at all, specifically for Black women and femmes like that. Like that's a no, right? And so it's constantly a push, pushing that, like pushing out the noise and kind of forcing ourselves into the center and saying, no, I'm going to go put my feet on the beach in the water today. Like that's happening. I can take the calls. I can do all the things, but I have to like kind of center myself. And that's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. It's
because
it can become a fight.
Yeah. And it's almost like you put this guilt on yourself. And it's like, you don't even have like, why do I feel guilty about taking care of myself? And why is that even a thing? When I look at, a lot of my white friends or, other white women and they're like, oh yeah, I'll be, traveling to Europe for the month. And I'm like, oh, well, that's nice. But they will shut down and they will do it. And I'm like, well, why am I not living in that freedom? And why am I making excuses for not? Right. Like I can do the same thing. And I think it is, again, what we do to each other sometimes, I realized again as I was building my nonprofit and, people like, you're not grassroots. Well, why would you say that? Like, I know I touch people in prisons and community, probably more so than you. But because I take care of myself a particular way, because I like nice things, now I'm not considered grassroots. Like, that's ridiculous, And so it's like, again, we are imposing, this idea of scarcity is powerful or is down, and that's nonsense, right? And as you begin to grow and mature or experience the world in a very different way, you understand that is the biggest lie that we have been told, and that we can continue to perpetuate, and that it is important to live abundantly, to think abundantly, and to give abundantly so that you receive abundantly. And, right now in my life, that's just where I don't want to be around people who don't think that way.
Yeah.
Like, you don't think from a lens of abundance, you're not my person. And, that's it. I've been able to create boundaries, to move myself and set myself apart, right? Because I am. And, when you realize about the calling and anointing that you have in your life, and sometimes you're in this world, but you're not of this world, that you have to be different. You have to, and you have to remove yourself. And while it's painful and it's also lonely, when you learn to love yourself and you learn to exhale, right? You learn that in that lonely space, it is stillness and preparing you for your next phase, and not necessarily loneliness.
Right. And we don't have to be the sacrificial lamb, right? We don't have to sacrifice our own well-being for the betterment of our community, right? Like, that's that mindset of, I have to give all of myself for this thing to be successful, or for me to help people, or whatever we're passionate about, or whatever our thing is. We don't have to be the sacrificial lamb. Like, I don't have to lay on that altar. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not going to give. I can give of myself, but I don't have to sacrifice all of me to help my community or to better other people's lives, right? And I mean, it's, it's racism. It's, systemic oppression. It's, our country was built on the backs of Black people. And so it's in our DNA as well. Like, we have to heal and undo that I don't have to, my back doesn't have to break, right? In order for this thing to live, or for these people to have a better way of being. It doesn't have to be at my own expense. And so I think that there's an unlearning and a relearning of what liberation is for us. What does that look like? What does that mean? I can do good work. Part of that for me is I can do good work, and I don't have to, be the sacrificial lamb to do that work. Like, I can actually go to Europe. I want to go to Europe.
Right.
Like, you go to Europe, girl, you better go.
No, right. And I learned that, I think what gave me permission was through Highland, to do good and do well, right? Like, you can do good and you can do well. And what I tell myself often, while yes, we as a people who have been through traumatic experiences, throughout generations and generations. And we've seen generations of Black women, overcome those, traumatic experiences. And while I have worked on my trauma, I decided I was no longer letting someone else's trauma be my heavy. And while I give grace to my people, I do, because I understand the things that we've gone through, that because I can look at things from a spiritual lens now, I don't take things personal in the way that I did. But I also know that I can love you from here, the distance, and love you through that from here, but you can come inside of my safe space, until you heal, right? And so there is a process that we all have to go through. I mean, shit, I could have let prison be what it was and came home and decided to say, oh my God, I have a federal felony conviction and I can't do anything, and negative self-talk and allow that. Or I could do what I did, right? This was an experience in my life. And while what was the good that came out of it that I could thank God for, and what could I use that for in order to change the trajectory of not only my life, but that of others? And that was the path that I chose to go through. And while it was not easy, and it's not easy, I still have to break barriers. I still am discriminated against. I still go through the things that I go through each and every day. I still persevere, and I'm still resilient. And I still know that God is leading me. And I still know that I am moving in purpose. And so because of that, that gives me hope in order to continue to move forward, right? I don't allow my Blackness and the things that my ancestors have been through to keep me oppressed. I allow my Blackness as a tool and a weapon in order to continue to fight harder. And so, I think it is all about perspective, right? It's all and it's, do we continue to stay where we were, right? Or do we know the truth? And, education and information is power. It's very different. Access is power. And the access that we have today is very different. And so when people tell me, well, no, I don't have a computer, I don't have an internet, there's a public library everywhere. Because when I came home from prison, I went to the public library before I got and I sat on the computer and I did the things that I needed to do. And what I did not know, I asked for help. Right. And so there are things, I was going back and forth into a halfway house every day. Like I did that. People would say, I don't have any money. I was working a job that was $10 an hour. Like I did these things in order to get where I am today. So while, it is, sometimes you have to take these small incremental steps in order to get to the larger play. Right. But you have to humble yourself in those moments. And I know that through prison was the most humbling experience for me, that now I look at everything in great joy. I will get sad, I get disappointed, all the things, because I'm human and I'm in the flesh. But I quickly strap my bootstraps up and say, hold on, when I'm going to those visits on the weekend to see my loved ones, and I see and understand from whence I come and understand what, other people are going through right now. I know that, I should be grateful, for the abundant blessings God has given me to continuously live and breathe, to overcome and to execute.
Yeah. We are our ancestors' dream. Like we're living it, right? We are living it. If you had to drop just, a little wisdom on our listeners before we wrap this up, what would be a tidbit of wisdom from you to them? What would you drop on them? Some wisdom.
I think, well, one, Romans 8:28, in all things, God is good for those who love God, who are called according to your purpose. So, and no matter what it is that you're going through, honor that traumatic experience. Honor it, whatever it is, whatever you've been through. But you have the power, the soul power, in order to change the outcome of your life today. You don't have to say, like I know I used to say, I used to hear my mom say, I'm going to start a diet on Monday, right? If you're fat and you don't like the way you feel, change it today, right? Like, don't eat the donut. Don't do whatever you need to do, If you no longer like where you live today, save $5. Save it the next day, right? So you can get what you want the next day. Don't just look at people that you're following on social media and liking their pictures just because, mind you, this is a facade. Somebody's putting up something, but what they want you to see. Maybe not necessarily what's really going on, right? Ask them, how did they get where they're going? Because you want to get there too, right? Educate yourself. Spend time. I actually silence my notifications on all social media during the time of day that I'm supposed to be working because it's a distraction. It is a distraction of the enemy. I will say that because you will find yourself looking at everybody else's shit and not working on your own. I'm guilty of it. So I don't even do it. I'll get notification after 7:00 at night saying I got X amount of DMs or whatever the case may be, right? I think, you have to prioritize you because I struggle with this today, right? But I fly all over the place. Like I just got back to last night at 1 a.m. But what do they tell you? You have to put your mask on first before you have to save the next person. You have to. And so take care of you. And if you don't know what that looks like, because we're always growing, we're always evolving, we're always changing, try new things. Do not be afraid to try new things because you will be surprised at things that you like. Back to old things. Like I said, I was going to go back to just playing the piano again. Why it created discipline in my life. And sometimes we need that discipline. Another one, be honest with yourself. You don't have to tell everybody that you're falling short. They probably already know. Look at yourself in the mirror and say you want to do something different because you don't like how you feel. You don't like how you look. You don't like what you're thinking. You have the ability to change anything and everything in your life. It's your choice. And serve someone else. So often, we do a lot of things for selfish reasons. And just take a minute to serve someone who cannot do anything for you. Right? Because we are here, we're put here. God put us here to serve others. That's what our life is supposed to be, of service. So what are you going to do in order to help someone else? Those are a few little things.
Boom, 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 boom. Wisdom bomb, wisdom bomb, wisdom bomb, wisdom bomb.
Just people.
So good. So good. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. If folks want to find you, like follow you, follow your work, see what you're up to, where can they follow you? Are you on the gram? Where are you at?
I'm on the gram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, or I think it's called X now, but I don't really use it anymore since Elon Musk. And I'm on Threads, but I don't use that either. But either way, I am my name, Topeka K. Sam. So at TOPEKA KS is the Sam AM on all social media platforms and LinkedIn. And then you can find all the, businesses that I have and the stuff that I do from there.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about all the other stuff. You've got lots of
come
stuff.
Back.
Come back and talk about the other things you've got cooking. You got some pots on the stove. You got some stuff simmering, some stuff cooking, some stuff boiling over. You got all the things. My Highland sister, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me, chatting with us. I'm sure folks are going to get so much out of this episode. And I'm sending you love, and I hope you get your feet in the water today. Thank you for being on.
I appreciate you. Love you.
Exhale is a social movement prioritizing the overall well-being of Black women. You can join our movement by subscribing to this podcast and downloading Exhale app, and by continuing to prioritize yourself and your well-being. Keep taking deep inhales and long, long exhales. Until next time.